We're told growing up and into our adulthood that there are certain questions that you just don't ask people. How old are you? How far along are you? How much do you make? Who did you vote for? Do you really think this is the Maple Leafs' year? It's always their year. As I've gotten older, and especially since becoming a parent, though, I think the most offensive question that you can ask someone is, are you tired because you look tired? It starts when they're young, and so often you're sitting at the table and having lunch with a small child, maybe around 2 or 3 years old, and you start to notice their eyes getting heavy. They're nodding their head a little bit, maybe rubbing their eyes, struggling to eat whatever it is that's in front of them. And so you ask the obvious question, hey buddy, hey princess, are you feeling tired? Do you maybe need a rest or a nap? And in my experience with our 4 children, that was typically most often met with a very offended, no, I'm not tired, I no need a rest. Or at times it was followed by a flood of tears. How dare we suggest that they might be tired? Or perhaps in a completely hypothetical situation, you're picking your teenager up from, say, an overnight trip back from football in Ohio. And you ask them, hey, it sounds like you've had kind of a late night and didn't get much sleep. Are you tired? And the response perhaps is borderline offended with side eyes saying, I'm fine. But then 5 minutes later, you ask a question and receive no answer because they're sound asleep, their head against the window beside you, and that's how you stay the remainder of the drive to somewhere like, say, Oshawa. How dare you suggest they succumb to feeling tired? Or perhaps you're an adult out in the adult world doing adult things like going to work or going to church or just logging in to an online meeting and someone says, hey, Justin, how are you doing? You look really tired. What's your first thought? Oh, wow, do I look that bad? Completely offended by the thought that we might look tired. How dare they suggest we would succumb to feeling this totally normal part of life, such as being tired. And for some reason, we can be offended by the very thought of being tired, no matter the age that we find ourselves. The truth is, though, we become physically tired. It's all part of how we are made. But the reasons we become tired vary from circumstance to circumstance. Sometimes it's the level of effort we've put out or the sheer number of hours we've been doing something that can make us physically tired. There are lifestyle reasons for why we become tired, such as poor sleep or poor time management, poor eating or poor exercise habits. And there are reasons that are out of our control. Or reasons in our control, that with some changes to our behavior, we can feel rested. But there are also things out of our control as well. Medical reasons for why we become tired. Things like sleep apnea and iron deficiency and thyroid disorders and mental health challenges, among so many other things. There are medications we might be required to take that cause us to feel tired and others that make us feel rested. Other times, the feeling of being tired and weary has less to do with our physical realities and more to do with the circumstances we find ourselves in, the stresses that are bound to come in our life. We find ourselves being emotionally or mentally or spiritually tired. It's into this type of situation that our passage of scripture from this morning was written. To Jewish people living who were tired. They were living in exile in Babylon. Verse 1 of chapter 40 says, comfort, comfort my people, says your God. There is a clear indication from the beginning of this chapter that the people are in a state of emotional, mental, spiritual distress. They're not hearing Isaiah's words from the comfort of their own homes. They're not in their homeland. They're not surrounded by their people. They have been exiled to a foreign land. They are being held captive, living in a time of hardship and oppression. They were living in a situation that had stretched on for decades, that didn't seem to have an end, resigning themselves to the idea that this would be their future, perhaps their children's future and their children's future as well. The people Isaiah was writing to in chapter 20 were tired and weary because of the stresses that consumed their lives, and it had become part of their human experience. Verse 30 was reminding the people that in that situation, even youths would grow tired and weary. Young men and women stumble and fall. Youths, the young, strong, and full of energy, grow tired and weary. Youths who were to be at the height of health and endurance, they would be energetic and enthusiastic. Even they would grow tired and weary under the stresses they were under. Experiencing it physically, but more so, they were living in a situation where they would be experiencing what it would be like to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually tired and weary. Feeling that we can have, and perhaps you've come with this morning. Feeling tired and weary because of the stresses we feel that weigh on us and wear us out. Internal or external. Things we can control and things we can't control. The strain of raising kids in a broken world, being away from family and friends, looking in on aging parents who need our help, or perhaps doing all of those things somehow at the same time. Or perhaps our tiredness and our weariness is because we're aging in a world that's constantly changing and we're trying to keep up. Growing older and not having that youthful energy, strength, health, or enthusiasm. Perhaps this morning it's tired and weary from the pressures of meeting deadlines at work or school that never seem to end. Piling up faster than we can complete them, putting out one fire while 2 or 3 more pop up somewhere else. Tired and weary from the stress of caring for a loved one in the final stages of life, or a diagnosis that seems too heavy to carry the load for. Externally, we can become tired and weary, struggling to see all the good when the news seems to be so destructive, divisive, demeaning, and at times just plain dumb in this country and in others as well. We can become tired and weary from looking around at everything going on, crying out to God, looking for him in the midst of the storms of life, trying desperately to hear his voice and feeling like they did, that he isn't answering, that he isn't listening, or he isn't even there anymore. From time to time, we can understand feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually tired and weary. We can at times get caught by the stresses of life, consumed by the things that drain us and wear us out and cause us to feel those things. The people in Isaiah's time knew this all too well, and like us, they weren't afraid to express it to anyone who would listen. God knew this and had heard them, so he sent his prophet with a message on how they could combat it and how we can too. And so in verse 27, Isaiah says, "Why do you complain? Why do you say, my way is hidden from the Lord, my cause is disregarded by my God?" The people, you see, are weary, and so they've come to believe that God no longer sees them, can no longer understand them, or worse, that God has completely disregarded them. And so they're consumed by all the things the world has thrown at them. They're unseen, unloved, and uncared for. But God is not going to leave them in those feelings, Isaiah says. And so he challenges them in verse 28 when he asks the questions, "Do you not know? Have you not heard?" In my mind, as I read this, it seems as though Isaiah is shocked by the actions of the people, even knowing their situation. He can't believe it. He's in disbelief that they could be this senseless, that they can't see what's happening around them. Now, I was going to do the face that I did a couple weeks ago when you're driving by someone slow in the fast lane, but I got that meme sent to me so many times by people, I won't add any more fuel to the social media fire that was going on. But he says to them, "People of God, haven't you heard?" The Message paraphrase puts it this way: "Don't you know anything? Haven't you been listening?" The people in their fatigue and their weariness have lost sight of the God they serve. And so Isaiah is now going to remind them of who God is. And he continues in verse 28 by describing God this way: the Lord is the everlasting God. Isaiah is telling them that God has always been and always will be, that he transcends time and space, that he's ever present, that the God they serve is faithful and knows everything, that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, that they could never be hidden from God. And he continues, the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. Isaiah is reminding the people of Israel of just how powerful and present their God has always been. He took the time to create the heavens and the earth. He created the day and the night and the different seasons. He created the sun, the moon, and the stars, placed them perfectly in the sky. He created the fish of the sea and the animals of the earth. But Isaiah, in these words, wants to remind the people most of all that the God they're questioning, their God, is the creator of each and every one of them. He knows their names. He hears their cries. And because of that, he is fully capable of doing what they need and has been with them through hardships and trials and even in this period of exile. That their creator has not disregarded them. And he says, the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired and weary. It's hard for us to understand at times God, because we can only imagine him from a human perspective, because we're limited by what we know, what we see, what we can experience. But the things we need are not the things God needs. We as humans grow tired and weary, but not their God, not our God. He will not grow tired and weary. After creation, he rested, not because he needed to, for our benefit, to show us a rhythm. The people of Israel needed that reminder of who God is. He's the Lord. He's everlasting. He's creator. He's one who does not grow tired and weary. All of these things should have been a help, a hope, an encouragement to them. These are amazing things about their God, but the people were still stuck in the mess of life. And so Isaiah breaks it down further, and he speaks more directly about what God can do for them specifically. And verse 29 says, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Isaiah just reminded the people of who God is, of his power and his strength, and now he's telling them that God would share that strength with them when they were feeling worn out, burned out, and at the end of their own abilities. He's reminding them and us in studying this passage that God doesn't leave us where we are. He doesn't just allow us to get stuck in the weariness. God steps in and offers to provide strength and power to the weary and the weak. So he knew his people were feeling that at that time, that they'd taken their eyes off of him in the waiting, that it caused them to lose focus, to believe the lies that God would disregard them, to complain about a God who is everlasting and creator. But Isaiah is drawing them back to him. And he speaks the truth that humans, even youths, the young, will grow tired and weary, but the cure for it is to lean into the strength of their God. And verse 31 says, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They'll soar on wings like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Those who hope in the Lord. Hope. That's the word the NIV translation of the Bible uses. The New Living Translation says, those who trust in the Lord. And the Message, the King James Version, and several other translations of the Bibles use a different word. It says, those who wait. Those who wait on the Lord. Those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. Waiting meaning they would allow their faith to well up, to build up within them, to grow in them so they could be patient and obedient. So they would learn to rely on God's strength and guidance while he worked out his plans. That they would wait, make the conscious decision to connect with the Lord instead of becoming disconnected by the world. That they would choose to acknowledge in the challenges that God is in control. that he will strengthen them to get through it if they depend on him, that it would require patience, yes, and calm in the face of uncertainty, that they would draw closer to him and expect him to come through for them in this life or the next. Isaiah was reminding the people that God would provide the strength that they would need to find renewal in their lives if they waited on him. That this is how they would keep from being tired and weary. Wording that, friends, sounds familiar to what we heard last week during our message on the importance of rest. The words of Matthew 11:28-30, where Jesus instructs us to come to him when we are feeling tired and weary. And he assures us that he will give us rest, true rest. That his yoke, his burden is easy and light. Jesus' words in Matthew invite us to come into a state of rest. God's words through Isaiah promise that in that rest, we will also experience in his presence renewal. We will be renewed when we wait on the Lord. That if we want to be restored, refreshed, revitalized, or reestablished, we need to hope, to trust, to wait in the Lord, to wait for him in the struggles, with health, with finances, with relationship, with work, the struggle to carry any more than what we already have on our plate. We need to trust in him in the challenges, those in our control and outside of our control, that we see coming and that seem to come out of nowhere. The challenge of trying to balance just one more thing. And we need to hope in him in the uncertainty. The uncertainty of this time in the history of the world, of what our leaders are doing or not doing. The uncertainty of what tomorrow will look like or if we will even get there. That in all of those things, God tells us through Isaiah, we can be renewed, to soar at a different level, to be with the eagles above it all in his strength. Because friends, I don't want to offend you by asking the question, but are you tired this morning? Did you come here today feeling a little weary? Did you get up this morning after resting feeling tired and weary from all that's going on? Because I'll be honest, some of you, some of us, look a little tired today. Now, I'm not going to point it out, but if you needed to be nudged awake at all during the service, or you just felt a bunch of eyes turned to you, it could be you that I'm speaking to. Because the everlasting God, the one who created the universe from nothing, desires to be in relationship with you, wants you to come to him to find rest and renewal, wants to offer you a new rhythm of life for your body, your mind, and your spirit if you'll hope and you'll trust in him. So do you have the time and the patience to wait on God today?